And those of you who have your laptops now, if you guys don't remember, you open up Creo Parametric 2.0. When you open it up, there will be like a little window here in this main screen. Okay, you can just exit out of that. You guys really don't need it for now. Okay, so last section we pretty much discussed what like the sketching features and how to use constraints and the certain tools within the sketching features. And then in this workshop, we're going to actually put those to use to create a part. Because in this workshop, we're going to be going over how to create extrudes and extrude cuts and how to use the hole tool. And if we have time, we'll be able to get started onto revolves and revolve cuts. That's only if we have time. If not, I'll wrap it up in next week's session. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to create a part. So you want to go to this new, under home, and then you want to make sure that part's highlighted. You can still leave solid as the subtype, and you can still use the default template. It doesn't really matter. And as an example to show you guys how to use all these extrude features and all this, I'm going to create for you guys, let me just back out of this for a second. We're going to be creating a little cover example kind of like this. Because it'll show you, you create the first body, which will show you how to create the extrude feature, show you how to do extrude cuts, and the holes were created with two different methods. One was created with just creating an extrude and making an extrude cut all the way through the first extrude. And then you have two different holes, and I'll show you guys how to do those. Okay, so let me just close out of this. Actually, no, let me leave it open. So go back to create a part, open it up, all the same templates. I'm just going to call this one cover. You can name it whatever you want, as long as you don't have to save it. You can if you want to. So we want to set up our datums, which are all these, so that they appear the way that we want it to. So we want to start off where we want the front to be, let me see this, where is it? We want the front to be like this surface. So to set that up, go to View, Name Views, and you want to go to Front. And then it'll line up your datums. Oh, and a reminder is to turn on these datum tags, the names. You go to View, and then right here. Under the show, it's called Plain Tag Display. Tap that, and it'll look like it's kind of indented, but then your datum tags will turn on. Okay, so the way that we want to model this first feature is that we want the right and the top features to be along the edges of the part, because when you dimension it out, you want to dimension it from like a certain point as like an origin. So to start that off, we want to open up start the extrude tool. So go under Model, if you want to go to Shapes, and then you're going to click on the extrude tool. And then notice that a new tab will pop up with all of these other options. Notice that the placement tool is in red. You can click, if you can open up the sketch window using two methods. You can click here on the window, and then do define, and define it however you want. And then, open up the sketch window, define your sketching plane and then your references, or you could also, in this main window, hold down the right click and then do define internal sketch. I kind of like doing it this one better because you don't have to go all the way up here, because when you have a bigger computer, it's kind of takes a little bit more time to track it, whereas here you can just right click right in front of where you're looking and then choose to go into the sketch plane. So we want to sketch onto the front plane because that's the view that we want. And right now, since we only have 3 datum planes, it doesn't really matter which one appears in this box right here. A time where it will matter is when you have a lot more datums, and Pro will automatically select whichever it feels fit. Right now, since we have so few, it doesn't really matter. So just whatever appears in yours, we can just go ahead and accept it. So now we entered into the sketch view. And so now we want to create the first basic sketch, the bigger rectangle that will be used for the thing. So you can use either this corner rectangle, sketch option or this line chain. I like the line chain because you can easily just declare your first line there. So just draw your first line and then do the middle click to leave it. And then middle click again, and then you can change the dimension. So we can change this to 1. And we had a question last workshop about the units. I ended up figuring out your default unit should be set to inches right now. You can see that and change them, including the material, and you have to leave out of Extrude and Sketch in order to access it. But it's in gray right now, put that Prepare. You can go to Prepare, and there will be an option to view the model properties. Let me go back to the main window. I'll show it to you guys again. I just thought I'd mention that. Okay, so now we want to create the rest of this rectangle now that we have this. And if you guys have any questions, please just ask. So select that one point that's at the top, extrude it out. Doesn't matter if it goes out to the window now, because we can always change it later. And go down to this bottom. Make sure the vertical constraint pops into place. There we go. So select and make sure it's along this. It walks on this bottom edge too, because the constraints can be very important. And it might be hard to see, but it should lock onto this point down here. So just select it. It should. What's going on? There we go. Okay, so we got a middle click and we'll leave it. And see that's kind of shaded? That means that all is good. It's locked onto all the points that you want it to. Because elsewise, if it's not shaded, if you have these two things turned on, if any of the edges turn up red, or which later on you will see where they will turn up red, or if they're not shaded, it could pop up with an error. When you go to leave the sketch feature, it'll pop up with an error saying that the sketch is incomplete. And if you go, it'll give you an option to continue ahead or to say no, and then go back in and fix whatever's wrong with your sketch. If you say yes and continue out of it, and you can continue with the extrude, it'll run the extrude, then it'll pop up with an error saying that it was unable to complete it. Which, when you have an error, it's very hard to go back through and track what your problem is, because it won't tell you specifically what your problem is. It'll just say that there is a problem, and leave it to you to go back through and find it. Huh? There's an option, it's this one right here. There we go. We left the creating the line thing. Okay, so we wanted this dimension that's up here. We want to change this to be 2.5. So now we have a shape that is 2.5 inches by 1 inch. And this will be the basic shape of our cover. So when that's done, we can just click OK, and it should be good. So now, notice that it's shaded a different color now. And when you right click and you move your mouse around, you'll see that it's actually 3D and that's extruded out. We want to change, this is not the thickness that we want. Creo will automatically assign a thickness to it, which I don't know where it gets its number from. It just pulls it out. Let's make it a 1/4 inch thick. So just make it 0.25 up here in this box. And actually, this Creo is really good with describing. Like you hover up over a feature, it'll describe exactly what the feature does. So click that, and notice that there's a little drop-down menu right here. That will, it actually gives you suggestions. Actually, no. Those are all things I've entered. Most of the time, they'll save values that you've entered, either over time or like when you're messing around with a whole bunch of features and you have a whole bunch of things open. It'll save every little thing that you've entered into this box. So, let's say you're messing around with the thickness of this thing. Say that it's thicker than you need it to, and then you go back through, make it a smaller thickness. And then you decide you don't like that. Sometimes it can be tough to have to go back through and just keep changing the values all the time. This makes it easier because it'll save all the values that you've entered. So just hit enter, and well, it's already done that. So we don't really need to mess with any of these features right now, but we will go through and mess with some of them later on in this workshop. So we can just click OK, this check mark right here, and it'll apply our features, and it'll change the color because that's just for it when it's modeling. And so there we go, we have our first extruded shape that we need for this thing. So for the next thing, we need to create, oh come on, I keep hitting the wrong one. Okay, there we go. This inside surface right here. And to do that, what you want to do, got to keep an eye on where this front plane is, but that doesn't really matter right now. So we can go to here, pretty much set it up the same way that you set up the main extrude. So go here, go to front, and so now you have the view that you want. So let's go back to model. I'm going to go to extrude, and it'll pop up with this window. You can do hold right click, and you can do define internal sketch. Now you want to select the plane that you want to sketch on. So I select the front plane, and you can select whatever, you're okay with using whatever reference pops up. So now click sketch. Okay, so for this, to create the inner walls, we're going to use a tool that's actually very handy, especially when it comes to doing stuff like this. It's called the offset tool. And what you'll do, the purpose of this thing is that it'll select an edge, so say this edge, and it'll offset, create a line that's offset from that line, the same constraints that that line has, to like by a certain value. So let's select the offset tool, which is under sketching, under the sketch tab. And it might be, actually no, it's not that hard to see on the screen, but it's kind of hard to see sometimes depending on how your screen is set up. And if you have a hard time seeing it, see how there's a label on there right now? Just wait for the label to pop up, and that means you're hovering over the edge that you need. So select that edge, and notice the arrow. And there's actually any directions right up here that pop up, asking for your input, and they're making it clear that whatever value you enter will be in the direction of the arrow. So notice that the arrow is going outside of the bracket. We want it to go in the opposite direction, so we want it to be a negative number. So just for the heck of it, let's make it 0.1. So a wall with like that. So there we go. And let's do that again for the bottom edge. So select that. So the tool is still selected. Then you still have to do a negative number because it's still in the opposite direction of where you want to go. So there we go. And now we want to do the same thing for these side edges. But what we want to do is make it a different thickness than what we've done before, because remember the holes there? Well, the holes are actually bigger than the 0.1 thickness. So we actually want to make it probably about 1/4 of an inch in order to fit those holes in there. So let's do, and pay attention to where the arrow is directed at now. Make it negative 0.25. There you go. Do the same thing for the other edge. Okay, there you go. Remember what I was saying earlier about the red lines, and notice that the inside of this is not shaded? If I go ahead and I leave out this, you don't have to follow along what I'm going to be doing right now, because it's hard. I'm going to be showing you the error stuff. So there's the incomplete section thing. So let's say that I want to say yes. So notice it's all error. And actually, it won't let me do it. Sometimes it will let you run the thing, and so this is actually smart because it's stopping you. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to save my stuff. Okay, so let me just go back through and do that real quick. Okay, this little window here that pops up, you can just close out of that. That'll close it too. Or you just click the middle button, and I'll close it. So to get rid of these extra edges, you want to use the segment tool that I mentioned in the first workshop, and it'll let you delete these little edges back here. You just hover over them until they're highlighted, and just click them, and it'll delete them without having to delete these. You can also, which I wouldn't really recommend it for these little edges because it can get really messy, you can also hold the left click and then move it like this. When you have like large sections that you need to delete, and there's a big gap between sections, it's good to use that. But when you have these pieces that are so close together, it's so easy to mess up and delete parts like these that you don't want to delete. So I can just delete them like that for now. So now your part's complete. If you middle click, you should leave out of that function, and now it's all highlighted, which means it's good to go. So when that's all done, you just click the OK button, and it'll extrude. Notice that we want it to be a cut, but now it's actually extruding a solid. So to fix that, it's actually going in the direction that we want. It's hard to see, but it's starting in this plane right here. So let's put in the thickness first that we want. Let's make it probably about going halfway into the metal plate. So let's do 0.125. But it's still creating a solid. So you make it a cut and make it to remove material. You just click this little button right here, which is the remove material button. Selecting that will erase the whatever solids ends up being within that feature. There are multiple ways to select how to remove material. If you have multiple edges, you can use this tool right here to select a certain edge that you want to go up to. There's also tools to like cut through all the material that's in front of it. You can cut up to the next surface, which for a small part like this is pretty much the exact same thing. But sometimes when you get a really messy part with all these different edges, all these different layers, it gets really messy. So you can just leave it like this, and it's all good to go. So we can just click OK. And there you go. You have your cut. So now we want to make the holes. And as I said before, there's two ways to make this. You can create a hole through the extrusion tool, or you can just create a hole using the hole tool right here. First, let's just do it using the extrude tool. So open that up, and yeah. So we want to make it from, you can use either this front surface or this back surface as a reference. Let's use this front surface, because we want to use these inner walls as in reference for placing these the holes that we need. So click here, right click, and then do Define Internal Sketch. When the window pops up, hover over this edge until the surface pops up, because you don't want to select a plane this time. So when this pops up, click it, and it'll define your, it'll choose that as your sketching plane. And you're still fine with using the reference planes, the datum planes as the reference, because they're pretty much in the spot that we need them to be. So here's the surface that we need. Let's go to the back view to make it flat. So now, to use these inside edges as a reference, you actually want to go to this tool right here, which is on the far left side under Setup in the sketching tab. It's called References. So select that, and they might be hard to see, but you hover over approximately where they are, and the tool will actually highlight where they are. So you want to select them, and notice that when you're selecting them, they're actually creating the tools. And actually, I do not need these top ones. My bad. So you can just, it didn't delete them. There we go. Okay. So there we go. Those are the references that we need. So now we can use these two to place the place them where we want them. So we know that these are 0.25, but let's say that in all the modeling you've done, you've forgotten what the dimension is. So using under the dimension tab, under sketch, you can click this reference tab, and it'll create a reference dimension wherever you click it. So, and this pretty much is saying that you can't edit this dimension. It'll show up for you so you can see it, but it won't allow you to go in and mess with it. So it won't, so by doing this, you can't mess around with this edge right here. It's fixed. So, now that we have that, let's go in and create two holes that will be used for the through holes. So create this right here. That'd be hard to see. Then you can create it over here. You want to make sure those two little green lines appear. Select that, and make sure the radius, the same radius constraint appears too. Click that again, and then there's slots. Middle click, and you leave out creating more. So let's make this hole 0.125. There's actually a reason why I'm making it 0.25. If you go onto the internet and you Google like clear hole sizes, they'll give you can probably find a PDF file or a table that has a list of like screw sizes and stuff like that, and you can also have like the clearance dimension that you need for the hole for when you model a part. And that's where I'm pulling that from. So here, if we want to make this like dead center in the middle of the 0.25, and the good thing about Creo, and I'm not too sure if SolidWorks will probably do the same thing too, it'll do the math for you. So so you can do 0.25 divided by 2, and it'll do the math for you. Do the same thing for over here. Now for the height of where it is, let's make them equally spaced apart. So since we're going to have another hole down here, that means it's going to be 1/3 of the way. So you just go in here, do 1 divided by 3. Actually no. 1 divided by 3. I bet. 1 divided by 3 times 2. And there you go. So you can even enter functions and stuff like that in there, and it'll do it for you. So, there we go, we've got the holes that we need. So when that's done, you can select OK. So now they kind of look like dowels coming out, which is not what we want. We actually want them to be through the cover. So, what we want to do is we want to flip the direction of where they're going. Because now they're coming out, we want them to go in. So to flip the direction, we click this Change Depth Direction button right here. Flipping them over the datum plane, over the surface that you selected, make them go in the opposite direction. We also want them to cut through the material, so let's click the Remove Material button. You can do a blind selection. Right now, this little white dot, that dot right there, is showing you how far, to what point it's erasing material from. That could get really messy. It's fine with leaving it how it is now, but to make it actually better, let's select the Extrude Up to Next Surface button, which is this one right here. So select that, and it'll go up to the next surface. So we're done with that one. You can just select OK. So now you have those holes. Now let's try out the hole button, because this one's actually pretty neat. It'll do the exact same function, it's just in a different way. I actually kind of like the extrude tool better when you have to do clearance holes like that, because you won't have as many functions in your model tree as if you did it with creating all these holes. But the hole tool is neat if you need to create like you have two functions, two different methods you can choose. You have this create simple hole button, which is pretty much creating a hole like we just did, and which is what the one we will use in a second. But this create standard hole is creating a hole based off of a screw that you select. This drop-down menu right here offers a whole different selection of screws, and you can figure out what each of these mean by just Googling it and all this. One of the standard holes is this one. Is actually not the one that we're using, that I decided to use as a reference for this one. So I'm actually just going to create your own one. So you do have the option for like different thread types. You can create different like depths and stuff like that. You have the option to create a countersink or a counterbore, and that's like, say you want the head of the screw to be flush with the surface. That's creating an indentation so that when you screw it in, it'll be flush with it. But for now, that's not what we want. So let's just go back to the create simple hole. Let's set the diameter to 0.125. And then we can do how far into it as being throw up to next surface. Pretty much exactly how we did this, the extrude. So for the placement, it's a little bit more complicated. So for the placement, for the surface that you want to place it on, select the front surface. And there you go. But notice, it's wherever you click that'll put it. That's not what we want. So in the offset references right here, underneath, directly underneath the placement tab, select that. You're going to hold down the control button. First move your screen to where you can see these two edges. Hover over the surface to where the entire thing is highlighted. If you hover over the edge, it'll select edges. You don't want that. So hover over these surfaces and select these two. And there you go. You have your two surfaces. You can control the dimensions of where it's placed, either on your main window right here or in here. It's kind of neater to see it in here. So let's put this one directly in the middle of 0.25. Now this one, the second one, its height, you want to make that one a third of the way into it. So do 1 divided by 3. And there you go, it's placed your hole. So we can select OK, and it's placed your hole. We can create another hole for the other side of the cover. So we can set up the same radius and the root cut again. So 0.25. 0.125. And then the extrude up to next surface. And then use the placement. Select the surface that you want again. And then the same offset references. So notice that this first offset for this, at least for this one, was the bottom edge. So that will be our height now. So 1 divided by 3, we'll set it there. Just do 0.25 divided by 2 for this one. You put it where you want it. Notice it's rounding off to 2 decimal places, but if I highlight it, actually it's not. You can probably change where your thing is. It's still in the same place, it's just rounding it differently. But it's still reading it as like here. So you can select OK, and it's good. So that's one way to do it. I'll show you another, at the very last lecture, I'm going to show you guys how to do patterns, how to do the mirror tool, which would save you having to recreate this hole, like the second hole, which you would do for the, but I'll get to that. The last lecture, I'll go back through and show you guys easier ways to create all these different parts without having to go through, recreate every single feature that's duplicated within it. So there you go. That's pretty much how to use a lot of the features within the Extrude. So, looks like we have plenty enough time, so I'll go ahead and get into the Revolve
A vast
stuff.
virus database has been updated.
So, you guys can save it if you want to. I'll go ahead and save it. So you can do save, and it'll ask you for a file destination. So I'm just going to select my desktop, no, my documents. And I had created a file earlier for this tutorial. I'm just going to save it there. And you can name it whatever you want, save it to whatever folder you want. Select OK, and I'll save it. So now you want to close out the file and open a whole new one. So to do that, you want to go to View. Under the Window options, click Close. And I'm just going to close this other one I had open. When this clears out, there will be an option there will be all these little things right here. I'm going to click this Erase Not Display button. Notice that this little window will pop up. This is telling you all the parts, all the sketches that you have open. If you have too much stuff open, or say you want to back out some changes that you've already made, you want to clear this out, because whatever you go in and open, it'll end up pulling up a fresh copy of it. So you don't have like conflicts and stuff like that. So let's click OK, and it'll clear it all out. So let's create a whole new part. And for this example, I'm just going to open this thing up to show you exactly what we're going to be creating. What? Sorry, that's the wrong one. So, never mind. I guess I didn't save it. My bad. Hold on. Okay. Let me just show you in here. We're going to be creating these two features right here using the Revolve tool. And this will be for the example. And I actually recommend you guys saving it, because we can actually use these dimensions again when it comes to creating this part later on. So, go to the Create a New Part tool, use the same functions, have part selected as the type, subtype is solid, and then use the default template. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it default, whatever the default is for now. So this window will pop up. We're going to set it up just like how we set up the other ones, but one very important thing to remember, to realize, is that when you create a revolve, you're starting from the side of it and revolving it around. So if you want, say, for the propeller, you want this to appear your front side. When you go to select the view to the front, you want to start sketching from the left or the right. So let's do that. So go to View, I'm going to activate it just in case, View, and go to Right. And there it's set up, you're pointing to the right. And you can create your view here, and it will revolve it around whatever axis you set it up as. Just to be safe, let's set up an axis to revolve it around. So you want to click this Model tab, and then under the Datum section, you want to click this Axis tool. And you want to create an axis that goes along this line right here. So let me just do this for a second. Oh, between these two right here. So you want to select this right plane. You want to hold Control and select the top plane. And there you go. Notice that there's now an axis running along between the two of them. Select OK. And I'm going to set my thing back to right. Okay. So now we're going to start the Revolve tool. So to do that, go to Model, and under the same section where Extrude is found, which is Shapes, Revolve is the top one on the smaller buttons. So select that one. Notice it's pretty much, the setup pretty much looks a lot like Extrude, except just a little bit different. So what we want to do is open up the sketch view so we can actually define our sketch. So hold down the right button, or you can go up here to placement, and then do define internal sketch. So there we go. We want to select right as the sketching plane. And then the top plane is okay as there's the reference. So you can just go ahead and select sketch. So now it's all set up. Let's make this datum plane right here at the back edge of the propeller nose. So we can go in. Let's create this line right here. So go up. We're actually going to make this thing really big. So in this dimension that pops up, double click it, and set it to 50. Notice in my zoom in for you, it zoomed in a little bit too much for me, where I couldn't see it, so I'm zooming out a bit. So now I want to create the bottom edge for they'll control the width of the nose. So let's go to the line tool again, select the bottom bottom corner of the origin, select it, and it should automatically lock onto it. Extrude it out, and then you're going to middle click to end that. Then middle click again to end it, to finalize it, to end it. Yeah. Okay, so come on, there you go. So for this dimension, double click it, and let's set that to 160. Then click enter. So there you go. You've got this axis that will revolve around, and then you got this. You got the thing that will control the width of it. So, to make it revolve around this center line, what you need to do is under this datum, the datum tag right here, which is in this sketch feature, select this tool right here, which is center line. Select this axis. Literally any point on this line is fine. And then notice that you'll have now this line to control. So you want to put it, notice that it's snapping to this line. So when it snaps on there, left click it, and then you're good to go. So just middle click it to leave out of it. So now you have a center line, and the part will revolve around that center line. So let's go back and start creating the rest of this nose. I'm going to create 2 more lines. One of them we don't need, and I'll go back through and delete it. But I want to have it as a reference. So let's go through and select this here. And then we want that to lock onto vertical. So select that. So now you have a square going there. So for this dimension right here, double click it, and let's set that to 60. And there you go. And now, if you had it as a free-floating edge, it could potentially get messed up. I like to have when I'm sketching, have an edge right here controlling it. So this is pretty much saying that it won't mess up. It'll still stay there, but you want to delete it before you finalize your sketch. So to create the curve part of the nose, we want to go in and select this. If you go over here to this tool, you have several options to create different kind of like curves. You can create rounds using this tool. You can all these different options. So let's select this tool right here, this 3-point tangent end. It should be the default for that function right there, that tool right there. So select this edge and select the very end of your bottom line, which it should automatically lock onto it. And notice that I moved it down until this, I'm going to select it, this corner right here became tangent. So middle click, and you should leave out of it. So I'm pretty much just winging it when it comes to determining the size of it. That's not always a good thing, but this is just an example, so there's no harm in it. But when you revolve it, it will kind of look like it. So there's one basic shape, And you can click OK. There's your sketch. You can also modify by how many degrees this thing revolves around. The default is 360, which is exactly what we want, so we can just leave it as is. So, huh? Did you leave out of the sketch? You need the dimensions again? So I can pull it up. Yeah, hold on, let me just pull it up again. So you can click OK and it should finish it up if it works. But I'm just going to do this to show the dimensions. So there you go. This tool is very handy because, as you guys can probably figure out, you can create like cones this way. You can create rings, spheres this way. Pretty much anything that requires revolving something, or like revolves around an axis. You can use it to. You can use this tool to model it. It's very limited though. Yeah, it's the. How do I do this? It's the. There we go. It's the right plane and the top plane. But this tool, as I was saying, this tool is very limited. You can't really do as much stuff, create as many parts with this tool as you can with the extrude, because you're limited to just revolving it around an axis. Whereas with the extrude tool, you can create all kinds of different shapes as long as you're extruding it out in a direction. There's other tools that will actually expand your thing, but at work, I actually use the extrude tool more than I use the revolve tool most often. You can also use the revolve tool to create holes sometimes. That's another method. So that say you have a surface that's kind of hard to get to, or you have to create a customized counterboard or countersink for a part, you can use the revolve tool for it to do that. But I'll show you, and that's using the revolve cut, kind of how you can do an extrude cut using a revolve cut. And so I'm going to show you guys how to do the revolve cut. What we're going to do is we're going to create a little cut that kind of goes around the nose of the cone. And I'll show you guys what it looks like. So go to Model, select Revolve. You want to select the right plane. So I'm just going to set this up so it looks pretty. So there you go. We're going to use the Offset tool again for this one. So go to the Sketch tab, and you want to select the Offset tool. I have failed to mention all these different options. Pretty much, we want to use the single tool for now, the single option for now. If The other two options are ways to say you want to use all of these surfaces for a reference, because the more complicated of a part you get, the more tedious it can be to go through and select every single little, every single edge. So using this loop tool, you will select one edge, you select the one next to it, and it'll automatically detect all the other edges around it and loop them all like that, and then it'll automatically create an offset of all those edges. But for now, we just want a revolve of two of the edges. So select this top edge, and notice that it's actually going the direction that we want it to now. Actually, no. Wait. Never mind. So you can do 0 for the offset, and it'll be right along the edge, which is actually what we want. So you can do the same thing for this top edge. Do 0, and it'll be along the edge. This project right here will actually do the exact same thing, and I'll show you guys that. So delete this. Do project, and then this edge, it'll just do it directly on that edge. Using either tool is perfectly fine for doing this. So I'm just going to exit out of it. So what we want to do is that we want to create a little cut probably about right here. So let's select the line tool. Where this point is, you want to make sure that the constraint where it's locked onto it appears. So to do this, you pull it out. Let's just create a square. Make sure that this vertical constraint appears. So there you go. So double click your middle button and the dimensions will appear. So let's make this one the vertical dimension 5. Let's make the horizontal the same one. So since I'm making them the same dimension, we can actually set up a constraint so that they're equal lengths. Which, when you're drawing out the lines, there is an option to, when you're drawing it out, it does appear with a constraint to do that. But it's very easy to lose that constraint, so I like to do it like this way. So select the two lines that you want to make. Come on. Oh my gosh, really? The two lines that you want to make the same dimension. So select this line and select the bottom line. Where's the error? Really? Never mind. This thing's acting kind of funny. Sorry. So you're fine with leaving it as is, since I can't find where the error menu popped up. But if we go ahead and do it this way, we still have these lines that are appearing off to the side that we don't want. So let's just choose this delete segment tool again and select the edges that you don't want. So let's zoom in here, because it'll actually still do the rest of the lines. Delete this arc and delete the line that's on the other side of it. So you just want it to be this closed surface right here. So you can select OK. And you can't see it, but it's revolving around it. But we want to make it a cut. Select the Remove Material tool. What the heck? Ah, here we go. Okay, so that was the problem. So you want to actually select you have to set up a reference for it to revolve around, because you didn't add the center line this time. So this is why we set up the axis. So this button this thing right here is where you put the axis that you want to revolve it around. So you hover over here and select the datum axis, and there you go. Now your thing appears. So with it appearing like that, you can go ahead and select OK, and it'll create the cut. And notice that on my old, since we have time. This thing, we have these things, these little edges right here, kind of representing bolts and stuff like that, and the cut right here in the middle. Since we have the time, we can go ahead and model that into this shape right here to save us time later on. So to do that, and pretty much, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Pretty much that wraps up pretty much how to use the Revolve tool. Some of the basic features, and it's kind of an example of how to do it. There's other things you can create. You guys are welcome to go ahead and mess around with it as much as you want to try to create your own shapes, find things. You probably even create a water bottle using the Revolve tool and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun if you have things to actually look at. Take dimension up yourself and then try to model it. It's a good way to get the kind of practice to get used to these programs and all the different things to use it. So let's go in and create the extrudes for this outer surface. We're going to have to create two different extrudes because the ones that look like the nuts and stuff like that are coming out, whereas the ones that is the circle is going in. So let's create the one for the circle. So select the extrude tool. When this menu pops up, go to placement, define, and then you want to select this package as the plane. And notice it's selecting some type of surface for the reference. We actually want to change that and set it to the right plane as the reference, which just clicking in the box will reset it and let you select it. So you can go ahead and fix that sketch. And there you go. So I'm going It was the right plane. You can select either the top or the right plane. It doesn't really matter because when you go into the window, it'll select the two that are in the middle. So I'm going to set it up, find whatever this package is. Let me just mess around with it. It's the front? Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. So let's go to the front view and go to Sketch. You want to select this circle tool and go to the intersection of these two datum planes and pull it out. Let's make it 25 inches in diameter. That looks pretty good. So just do that and then you're good. So just select OK to leave the sketch and you come into this. So you want to create it going into the surface of the Revolve feature, and then you want to also make it remove the material. So you use this button to flip it, and then the remove material button. We want it to barely go into the surface. So let's make it probably only about, let's say 20. So that looks pretty good. So then you can just click OK, and then it'll create your feature. So now we want to go in and create the little, I think, what were they, hexagons? Yeah, looks like it. So create the hexagons that will be the nut heads. So create the extrude, go to the extrude tool, and when this window pops up, go to placement, very slow, and define, select the same surface as the sketching plane, and then select the same surface as let's do the top surface, the top plane this time. It doesn't matter which one, because it still will select the two that go across the axis in the middle. So go ahead and select sketch. Oh. So now a window's popped up saying that we don't have enough oh, at least it's popped up for me saying that I don't have enough references. So now I actually want to go through and select the references that I want. So I want to select this right plane because that's a reference that I want. You can also select, like let's say I want to use this surface right here as a reference. Notice that only selecting one side of it will actually register the entire outer edge of it. And let's say I also want to use this inner edge right here as a reference. Notice that going through all this different stuff is popping up, but well, now it's landed on it. So if you're having trouble finding the surface or the edge or whatever it is that you want, you can filter through all the ones that are appearing for you by right-clicking it. Not holding it, just right-clicking it once. So just a real quick click will appear all the different things that's in the line of your mouse. So it's this surface that I want. So I'm going to select it. Now you have both the inner edge of what you want to use and the outer one. So I'm good with the references. So I can close that. Let's go to view. I'm going to set it up so it was the front plane. So there you go. Nice and neat. So let's set it up. You probably want it to be directly in the middle of between these two lines. So let's get the dimension for that between there. So go over here under the dimension in the sketch thing. Use the reference dimension again. Select the inside circle and the outside circle. Go over to the right or the left, doesn't matter. And then middle click. And then the tangent dimension for these two will pop up. Sometimes it probably gets a little bit iffy and it'll probably do like the center for these two, in which case it'll give you 0. This one is actually really nice to us and actually gave us exactly what we wanted. So let's start making the little hex heads that we want. So we can do, let's start off by just making a little square. And there's a reason why I want to do this. So there we go. This top edge we will keep. We will make this be our the top edge of our thing. And we're going to make this bottom edge the bottom edge of it. Let's make this one actually stop it. Okay. So let's select a middle point for this. So let's select this edge. And this, what's this thing doing? Never mind. Stop. Okay. So notice that here, to make it directly in the middle, we have to set this to 5. When you were drawing it, you could have set it up so that the constraint appears in the middle there. I've never really gotten the hang of creating that middle point constraint, so. But anyways, so let's create a middle point along this outer edge here. So middle click does not do anything. Never mind. Sorry. So let's see, where's the tool? I'm kind of cheating here. So select this edge right here, the side edge, find the middle point to create a random line. So now let's dimension this entire shape from this line to here. So create a normal dimension. Make sure that this line highlights, and then select this reference point down here. And then middle click. And then a dimension pops up for it. So the whole, actually, never mind. Dang it. Sorry, I keep messing up. You want to select this circle, and then this line. Sorry. So notice, since I did that, 2 different conflicts appeared. I want to delete this bottom one because that's the one where I messed up with. This is the dimension that I want. So since I want to put that middle line directly in the middle of it, let's take 37.5, divide by 2, and now it's in the middle. But I have too many edges of what I want. So I'm going to go through what? Oh, come on. Sorry. No, screw it. I'm just gonna. Okay. So this thing is really acting really weird on me. So I'm just going to take a different approach to doing this. I'm just go ahead and create the hexagon shape right off the bat. And notice it's all screwed up for this. So I'm actually going to clean this up and make them all the exact same size. So using this equal constraint, select them one at a time, using this top one as the reference. And notice that as I do this, they start popping to the same dimension. Seriously? Okay. Errors like that may pop up depending on how you did it. And just delete the ones that you don't want. Cool. So now notice that there's an L1 constraint for all of these edges. That is exactly what we want. So this top thing now controls each of the edges, which if I'm going too fast, I am recording this lecture, so you guys can go back through and watch it and skip through all my mistakes. So let's set this one to be, since it looks really big now, let's set it to 5. Which, why is this thing being a butthead? Okay, there's an error in here somewhere. Yeah. See? And that's why constraints are so important. I just ended up screwing that up. And this is where Pro E can be a butthead, because I do not know what the problem is. Okay, sorry about this. I think I had this same problem when it came to creating the shape earlier. So, let me try it again. Okay. while I'm messing with this and trying to figure it out, if you guys want to see if you guys can figure it out, go ahead. Okay, so there we go. That one actually acted pretty nicely. So what solved my problem there was when I drew that first line, I set that to be in the middle. So, I actually think I ended up creating an octagon. Oh well. So I created one line, made that symmetric, and then created another line that's symmetric about that center line on the other side of it. So when I did that, I took note of what dimension I had, and then created all these other lines, set them all equal to each other, and then set this one controlling it. There is actually a way to make it much easier. I could probably just delete this top line if my delete button actually works, which means it's not. And set that line, create that line again, set this same constraint here to this, the newly created line, and it should lock it. But let's just make this one, actually it looks like it's about in the middle now, so we can just leave that as is. It's really big though. So, now that we've created this, which I'm sorry if it's really messy and you guys can't follow along, but let's just set this to 10. And that actually kind of looks like one. So, to set that as is, we want to blindly extrude it out, which is what this tool is actually called normally. And because we don't really have any surface past this point to go up to, so we can't say that we want it to go up to any surface. And so we can just leave as is and then select OK, and there we've got a certain thing. So I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to show you guys. I'll actually, please save this, because in one of the, or when I upload the video, go back through, try to create that hexagon if you had or octagon if you guys had trouble creating it. Because I want to be able to reuse this part, because in the last lecture I want to show you guys how to revolve, say, this feature right here all around that center axis. But I like to keep them all into the same workshop, so I really don't want to go over that right now. Because, yeah, you guys can just call it propeller or whatever you guys want to call it, so that you guys can find it. So next lecture, I'm going to be going over and showing you guys, I did it again, how to create these propeller blades, which it's actually a pretty neat function, because it has more, this feature is called a blend protrusion, and it has a lot more a bit wider range than just creating stuff like this. It can be used, so say you have, like, I don't know, the leg of a table where it starts off bigger and ends smaller. This is the kind of function where you end up doing that kind. This is the tool that you use to do that kind of stuff. So somebody had asked me last class, as I was out the door, that how to create a pyramid. That's probably the kind of tool that you go through and do that. So, but that's for next week's lecture. So we're done for today. So thank you guys again for coming.
What is used more, SolidWorks or Creo? I noticed the DBF team are using SolidWorks.
I think the whole thing is that SolidWorks is more widely used here at school,
Okay.
but I think Pro is actually used more in the industry world. So as far as I know, at Lockheed, I don't think anybody really uses SolidWorks. I think They don't even have the newer they don't even have Creo 2.0. They have Wildfire 4.0, which is probably like 3 or 4 versions back. Which, it's not that Lucky doesn't have money, because they obviously have lots of money. It's probably just integrating all their engineers at the same time is probably the reason why that is. But you haven't put